So you're in this setting where you're, again, in this transition period, and you go into kind of a magical place in Spain, and you get inspired by the experience of the art of Picasso and so forth. You go to these places that have historical significance, and you're out of a history book. You're actually more experiencing this by being there and seeing it. And so you get into this place, and that kind of gets you to tap into something you much more want to be and do than just the corporate solar competitive life and guy that it didn't sound that inspired you very much. In that setting, you start coding again and you get this idea, I'm going to start a tech company to fight
do my part in fighting disinformation. And I think I wouldn't want to say I was inspired working on solar, but I think like the trip helped me.
Sounds like a different kind of inspiration you're talking about.
Well, yeah, I think
trip.
What the trip did was help me see that the battles to be fought, like when you're in the moment and you're going to a meeting and you're on a conference call, like you're like I'm all in. I'm trying to achieve the goal of the meeting or the call, but I had gotten too micro going in and out of that, right? And like even if I had achieved all my goals and if I'd helped my company achieve all its goals,
still be limited by.
We were still going to live in a world where you have people saying climate change is a hoax, where you have,
that disinformation limiting.
The disinformation
holding you guys back.
Yeah, and then it felt like, look, if like I'm not going to solve anything by myself, or it's not delusions of grandeur, but if I'm going to contribute, if I have skills and if I have the appetite for risk, this may be the last time I take a job before I have children, before I have a wife.
Now's the time.
Now is a time I can take a calculated risk, and the problem I want to deal with is one step before climate change, before clean energy. It's how we believe things. It's how we trust information, and hopefully get to a better place in marketing and politics.
And you saw a way where you felt like this was possible.
I did, yeah. I felt it kind of came together. A lot of these thoughts were in my head, and I did go into it hoping, that was the decision I was trying to figure out, was do I want to do a startup? That was, the first question was startup or go work at a company. The second question was stay in clean tech, which I had done for 10 years and I had built some expertise, or figure something else out, a different direction. And I think both of those things got answered.
Do you remember the particular moment when that happened? What you were doing, or where were you, or where you clenched it, you said, yep, this is what I'm doing next?
I'd say, because I was traveling solo the last 12 days of that trip, it was probably in Madrid, so actually even before I got to Andalusia, where I had no one to talk to. So I'd kind of go see museums, and then I was just kind of in this hotel room by myself, like learning how to code and like thinking, writing like little memos to myself. And the downtime was, it created that, it's the fortress of solitude. It was the alone time, which I hadn't had most of the trip, because most of the trip I was visiting people or traveling with people.
You were with your cousin or whoever else.
Yeah, I think the threads of thinking were all there, and they tied together.
Came together. You got that clarity.
Alone. Right. And I'm not an advocate of being alone too long, because I think that's how.
Yeah, but you got that came to you.
It came to me
when you were alone and you had that.
Exactly, and then from there, the idea started to take shape, and like I started like sketching different things I could try, and then I started to realize like what I needed to learn, where the gaps were between where I was and where I needed to be to start.
Did you feel like it was kind of crazy to come up with this idea and be like, God, can I even accomplish this thing? Is this even possible? Or are you just like, no, I'm going to do this. Is what I want to do. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I just felt like I'm going to do it. And when I came back to the U.S., and I started telling people, that's when people were like, this is crazy. Like it didn't seem crazy to me until I came back to reality, like it came back to my life.
You just believed it was you could do it. And so that was the birth of Averpoint.
Yeah.
Tell me what that is. Tell these guys what Averpoint is.
Well, so Averpoint's our grand vision is we're trying to build a decentralized standard of trust, a grassroots standard of trust online. So when you see information, what makes you trust it? I mean, in the 20th century, it was because some organization put its stamp of approval on it. The U.S. government, NBC News,
the New York Times.
The New York Times. So it could be media, it could be government, it could be religion. Religion has controlled and filtered information for most of human history, for a lot of human history. It could be
your trusted doctor who runs an incredible
experts,
podcast.
Exactly. And so I did a lot of reading, and a lot of this goes back to the early 20th century. I think you've probably heard me pontificate on this, but there's two figures that really struck me. One is Edward Bernays, and the other is Walter Lippmann. So Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he was an American, and he is the father of public relations. He was the
PR.
He was the PR advisor to most of the major corporations at one point or another.
In the early 1900s?
Well, he lived to be 100, so he was alive throughout most of the 20th century.
Okay.
But PR wasn't a profession, it wasn't a thing, and he turned it into a thing. And then Walter Lippmann is considered the father of modern journalism. And what both of them believed was that society had gotten too complicated for the New England town hall meeting, direct democracy. Yeah. And you needed...
simplify.
You need, the way, and then also psychology had shown people how the brain works. The brain simplifies. Lippmann actually coined the word stereotype. So we shape things, we use patterns to interpret the world. So we don't see facts and then form conclusions.
See them as you are.
We have conclusions and reinforce them with facts.
Bias.
Confirmation bias. And the two of them were two of many thinkers at that time who said, we need to establish a technocratic elite, a group of neutral people, ideally neutral people, who will filter the information, simplify the information, and help each group interpret the other groups. So it could be labor and management, it could be different sectors of the economy, it could be doctors and patients, but there was too much knowledge, it was too difficult, the brain was too yearning for something simple, and so you needed these elite players to help us understand each other.
Solve those problems, sure.
And they thought they were doing something very noble in preventing conflict. Without groups understanding each other, there's going to be conflict between labor and management, which happened a lot in the 20th century, between races, which happened in the 20th century, between countries, which happened in a big way in the two world wars. And then, there's one big flaw in that theory. What if the elite is self-serving, right?
What if they want to use those tools and principles to manipulate to their own gain?
Or, and filter the information in a way that helps themselves. So I would say 80-90% of if you were going to grade the technocratic elite, they basically ran the world for a century. They did great things. They, particularly after World War II, they did great things. They prevented World War III. They brought billions of people out of poverty. They spread democracy, education. They eradicated diseases. But the big thing, and we're talking a lot about this as a culture now on both sides, the left and the right, that the elite people in charge who were filtering things, pulling the strings, simplifying things, were self-dealing. So there were, although 9 out of 10 doctors were simplifying things in a good way, there were many doctors who actually advertised...
The snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Quacks.
Doctors for cigarettes.
Exactly, right? All those kinds of things. And so then you had this period the last 20 years where the internet suddenly let anyone say anything. And it became more like the early 20th century or late 19th century when there were just tons of newspapers everywhere. And who wins in the Wild West? Who wins when there's no filter? Well, it turns out that, so when I graduated college, I was very believed in this Jeffersonian ideal of truth. Jefferson has this line, truth is great and will prevail if left to herself. Hands off, let people debate, and the truth will emerge.
Almost sounds naive now.
And it turns out that so getting deep into psychology, like there's the fast brain and the slow brain. And if you manipulate the fast brain, you can trigger people and get them to do what you want. And without the elite filters, making sure we get good information, who's winning? It's the people that can best trigger our emotions.
Conspiracy theories, viral posts,
Yeah.
Anti-vaxxers.
And using data, you can figure out what does Larry think? What does he like? How do I trigger his emotions, good and bad, and associate them with my product?
Oh, how do you play me?
My candidate.
Oh, wow.
And in subtle ways, get your vote, get your sale. And we've shifted
the power of Facebook, huh?
Right. And we've shifted from the technocratic elite to the grassroots triggers, the grassroots emotional triggers. So what Averpoint's trying to create is the grassroots filter. So we're trying to do what Rotten Tomatoes does for movies to messages that get you to buy products and vote for things, vote for people. And imagine a world where, as you're presented persuasive messages to buy products, vote for candidates, there is something like Rotten Tomatoes that tells you this is more trustworthy. This is something I can believe. And if we are successful at doing that, then what we're helping the honest guys and the honest girls win more often.